As a programmer, it's quite normal for you to type errors, and even a user has a chance of giving a wrong input. So how do we handle this? Because the Java compiler will run or return or throw an error when you type a wrong statement, or in other words, if the syntax is wrong, you get an error. And during a runtime, when the user inputs the wrong value, then he gets an error. So to do this, the runtime errors, namely, we have the method of exceptions, wherein the errors are caught and thrown to the user as an exception message. So what is an exception? It is an error thrown by a program during compile time or runtime of a program as an easily understood statement. Therefore, the user needs to understand as to what kind of errors he has committed. The errors returned can make a program go wrong. Like say for example, when you divide any number by 0, then it's an infinity value. I am quite sure that an infinity value cannot be returned by the computer. Therefore, it is likely to give an error. It can produce an incorrect output. As I told you in the previous example, any number divided by 0 will not give the proper output. The program will get immediately stopped, or it will be terminated. In some cases, wherein when you give the wrong for loop, the loop can go to an infinity and your system can crash. There are two types of errors: the compile time errors and the runtime errors. The compile time errors are caused because of a wrong syntax. Like say for example, when you type a program, you might have forgotten to just put a semicolon at the end of a statement, or you have declared a variable next to a pre-processing statement, which is also wrong. So these errors are caught by the compiler and returned to the developer or the programmer to say that the error that is typed was wrong. The runtime error: a Java file, if it has no syntax errors, will be compiled and will be converted into a .class file, which means once a .class file is created, it only goes on to say that the program has no errors. But when the user gives a wrong input, it leads to a runtime error. Like the examples given below. When a user divides a number by 0, or an array is out of bound, like you have given only 3 values and you are trying to pass 5 values, and arguments are not passed in range. Like say for example, you've created a method with 3 inputs, but you are trying to pass 4 inputs, and a string value is passed in lieu of an integer, wherein instead of typing a number, you type a special character or a character, then it is likely to return an error. And you could have also seen this in real-time examples. When you're trying to fill a form on the web, you could have seen some highlights on the side of the text box. Enter characters, enter integers. So these are all the indexes that are given to the user so that the user may understand these particular inputs and type the right value. If not, the page will return an error. So these errors are handled and passed on as messages, which are called exceptions. You will understand more in detail exceptions only when you see a program. So now, shall we see a program to see how our exceptions work? Now let's see an example for an exception. This is an example for an arithmetic exception, but I have not caught the exception. Instead, I have simply typed a program. I have given values 10 and 2, and the value C, I have just divided A by B and I passed on the value on C, and in the next sentence I am just printing the value of C. Now just let's run this program and see what the output is. Now I type Java C. Now if I run this program, I get the value 5 because 10 has been divided by 2 and it returns the value 5. What happens, suppose if I divide the value by 0, I'll save this file, compile it, and once again run it. Yes, there are no compile time errors because there is no programming error which will say that a number divided by 0 is wrong. But there is always a runtime error. So let's try running this program, and now if you see, there is a huge error thrown by the exception class which says that divided by 0 at arithmetic.main, arithmetic.java and the 7th line. So this is quite a huge stack trace that has been passed on by the Java compiler or the Java runtime environment. So taking this into account, what we'd rather do is we'll catch this exception and pass on the message to the user in a way that he can understand it in a much better fashion. So in the next session, we'll see a program on how to run these kind of programs under a try-catch block and how to catch these errors with a catch block and how to pass on these errors to the user such that the user understands it in an easy manner. So let's go to the next session, but till such time, it's bye and thank you. As a programmer,